Bolden. I'm the director of SFA's Center for Career and Professional Development. And so we're excited to have all of you join us virtually. We would have loved to see you guys in person, but unfortunately we can't do that right now. And so we're happy to have so many of y'all on the video chat tonight. So it's going to be my pleasure to introduce our speaker here in just a moment. Just to give you guys a little bit of a heads up on how tonight will work. So I'm going to do the introduction, and then our speaker, Kayli Head, is going to take over and do a presentation. We will let her roll through her presentation, and I'm going to keep all the participants on mute just to kind of cut down on background noise and echoes and things like that. And then when Kayli finishes up her presentation, I'll unmute y'all to be able to ask any questions that you have. You can also put your questions in the group chat. So if you've got questions as we go, you're welcome to put those in there. They'll get addressed at the end. We are recording this workshop tonight to be able to send out to students and just provide. So if you don't want to ask your question on video, I understand that. You can drop it into the chat and we'll get that addressed in there. But so let's go ahead and get started and welcome our speaker. So Kayli Head was a mass communications major at Stephen F. Austin State University and is a 2008 graduate. She's now the owner of the Bloom Bar, a boutique floral design studio specializing in fresh and current wedding florals and unique designs for corporate events. Kayli launched her business in 2015 after 18 years of design experience in the floral and event industry. Today, her team of 5 employees design more than 100 events per year all over Central Texas from her studio in downtown San Marcos. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Kayli Head.
Hi, y'all. Thank you, Jamie. Well, I am so excited to chat with y'all. I'm just going to kind of go into my story and how all of this got started. I was telling Jamie, I'm excited to talk through recent changes, as all small businesses are probably experiencing a major shift kind of out of nowhere. So I am excited to talk through that with you guys and just share my experience as an entrepreneur. So I'm going to just jump right into it. As Jamie said, my little flower shop is called the Bloom Bar, and we are not a retail shop. We only do special events. And so that is going to be an interesting perspective now as well, in the light of current events. So I'll walk you through how we got to where we are and where we're going next. So this is me. So as Jamie said, graduated from SFA. I studied public relations was my emphasis, and I was a marketing minor. So spent some time in the College of Business, but I was terrible at math, so I did not go the business school route. Went with communications and had a career in that for several years. I actually, I wrote for Sawdust magazine, which you might recognize, and I worked in the office, I believe it's Office of University Marketing now. It used to be Public Affairs. So I was there for several years after I graduated. I did an internship there, as well as with our local Chamber of Commerce. So I was in the PR and event world from early on. So that's kind of how I got my start. And also floral design. So a lot of people ask me how I got into flowers and how this all ended up. In my high school, I went to Naaman Forest in Garland, Texas, and we had a world-class horticulture program. So I got up at 5 a.m. every morning when I was like a junior and senior in high school and studied plants every morning. I think that's some serious dedication. So they also had a floral design and advanced wedding design course there at my school. So that really set the trajectory. I remember the first design I ever made, and I just was hooked. I instantly fell in love with it. I competed at the state level doing floral design. And so I really caught the bug early. But when it came to college, I remember thinking that my mom would never pay for, me to go to floral design school, because that's so impractical, right? It's like a niche market. And I thought that journalism and writing was my closest creative outlet that I could get away with saying I was going to go to college for. So that's kind of where I started. And at the end of the day, I'm glad that I went that route, because the skills that I learned at SFA and just having a more broad base than just a niche floral design major really set me up for the rest of my career. And so I was able to transfer some of those skills and grow my my career before I even started my own business. So that's how that all got started. So this is me, this is my life before entrepreneurship. So I kind of dabbled, I was kind of a jack of all trades, which it worked really well for me. I did a little bit of photography, some social media management, writing, of course, and then some donor relations, public relations, that sort of thing. So I just always stayed curious, I think. I was always, in this picture, I think I was begging the campus photographer. I was like, can you teach me how to do this? How are you doing this? I was probably so annoying, but it worked out, and I was grateful to have that experience. Later in 2013, my husband took a job in Lockhart, Texas, which brought us out to Central Texas, Austin area. So at that time, I moved jobless to San Marcos, Texas, mostly because we loved going to the river, and it was a beautiful place. But there was a job opening at something called the Main Street program. And if any of y'all are in Nacogdoches, you also have a wonderful Main Street program that is all about downtown events and historic preservation. So I was a volunteer there before I made that move. So I kind of worked my resume and was able to transfer that into a job at the city of San Marcos, helping out entrepreneurs. So that was a big part of my role, was helping small businesses get access to resources. We hosted events. It was a lot of fun, and it really, I always knew I wanted to start my own business. I just didn't ever think it was practical. No one in my family had ever opened a business, and so I had the job with good benefits, right? That was drilled into my head. So, but I had a lot of fun. And then my second job, I took a promotion at the city of Bastrop, and I was the director of their Main Street program. So they had a world-renowned Main Street program that was really, really top-notch. It was a really cute historic town, but I kind of found myself, I felt like I was in someone else's job. It just didn't feel quite right. So I remember having just a gut check right after I took that job, and someone asked me, well, what's your gut telling you? And I was like, well, if I'm being honest, it's that I would rather be a small business owner than be in charge of this job and taking this job. It just doesn't feel right. So I want to share a quote because this was the breaking point. I feel like this is the before and after point in my life and career where I took the leap. And the quote is this: it may be that when we no longer know which way to go, that we begin our real journey, or we come to our real journey. So I found myself at week 1 already knowing that this was a bad fit for me. This job was really prestigious. I had gotten that job out of people that had a lot more experience than me, and probably 100 applicants. And there's just a lot of pressure as a small knit group with the state of Texas that all eyes were on me, and I hated it. So I remember floating the river, and this is one of my favorite things, is that I was floating the river, and I told my friend, I was like, I would just rather fall flat on my face doing something that I loved than to spend one more second in this job doing something that I hate. And so that was just a real turning point for me, and it was scary, and it went against everything I knew. But at some point, the pain, I was just like, I gotta get out of here. Like, this isn't me. So that's when I started the Bloom Bar from my living room and my garage. So young Kayli, I look at this picture and I'm like so full of hope. But look at that smile. I mean, I was stoked. I told my husband, I was like, picture this. This is what we're going to do. We're going to clear all the furniture out of the living room. I've got tile floors. Like, we could totally have like a small studio in here, clear out the garage. And I got to work. So I went out. A lot of people ask me if I started with any funding, anything like that. I really didn't. I probably had $1,000 in savings, and I spent half of it on a website, and everyone loves flowers. So I was very lucky to have a visual representation of my work. And so I was able to basically cold call planners in my area and just say, hey, I have a lot of experience in this, but I'm launching my new venture. And I had also dabbled in some other freelance gigs with some awesome florists. So I met some great planners and photographers, but I just started working it. I reached out to those people. I did a lot of Instagram stalking and just to photographers in my area, and I was like, hey, I love your work. I'd love to work with you. And like, I set up coffee dates, and some of those friendships I still have today. And it just led to this snowball of kind of getting in the mix in the wedding industry. So it was a lot of luck, and it was just it just felt a little magical that it all kind of happened like that. I also had like 5 friends getting married in a very short amount of time that year that I started. So I was able to quickly get content, cut them a great deal, and get content for my Instagram. And I just really focused on starting my online presence that way. So, and so the Bloom Bar was born. After I outgrew my small space, it quickly became clear that I needed some more space. And actually my building, I'm obsessed with my little storefront. It's a historic building from the 1920s. And my landlord was actually, since I was in San Marcos, I knew all of these business owners from when I worked at Main Street. So I had made all of these connections with these property owners and business owners that I basically had already made my friend group that I was able to just go into and thrive because I had already made those established relationships. But my landlord, he actually called me about this space, and I don't know if you've been to downtown San Marcos, but it ain't cheap. But he is a wonderful person that really knew me, knew my story, and was like, I think you should work in this space. And so we started out, I expanded in that building. I was first renting just the first probably a quarter of that space. And I quickly grew into the rest of it, and I had room to grow. And so I've been there ever since. We opened our doors in 2016 there after leaving my home studio. And even though we're a storefront, I break a lot of hearts because we don't sell flowers and plants like a normal retail store would, which is different. It's a lot different than you think of like your mom and pop florist. Like, it's kind of old school. This is very much more high-end studio style, and it really worked well for our business. We're right in between Austin and San Antonio markets. So I was able to tap both of those markets and Hill Country really easily from like a centralized location. So we do host small pop-up shops and workshops as well from that space, which we kind of use those mostly as marketing opportunities, just to kind of say we're here and have some fun and pop some bubbly and design some flowers together. It's good for our brand. We try to have a lot of fun and just be very approachable. So those events really help to do that for us. And then our makeup is really, we're mostly weddings, so 85%. And then that 15% is corporate events, private parties, things like that. So as far as financials go, the way that I was able to quickly do all of this without a massive funding source is that we hold a 50% deposit, and that basically pays for my space and for myself. And then that remaining half is 2 weeks before their wedding date. And so I was able to kind of have that instant cash flow for things that I needed to do. And then the flowers are basically paid for later. So that's kind of the model that we used. And then below here in my slides, you'll see kind of the basic, this is the standard for the floral industry of how our budget's allocated for every event. So 30% flowers and hard goods, 30% overhead for our space and designers. We recently downsized to a staff of 3, so we'll talk about that later. But then 30% profit goes back to me or back into the business. I'm very grateful that we're super frugal, and I don't like to spend too much out of my bank account, which came in handy last week. So, and then that last 10% for taxes. So as I mentioned to you earlier, I hardly spend any money on advertising at all. The only publication we advertise in is Brides of Boston, because they have a more higher end clientele. But mostly, and this has always been from the beginning of my business, was we have a visual product. I did a lot of stuff for free. You know, I sponsored almost every event that I thought I could put my flowers in front of the right people. So for me, that's venues, that's wedding planners, and it's other wedding professionals. I rarely even market to my end user. So it's very B2B. My brides and couples find me on Instagram, and that's my most direct link. But the rest that I do is word of mouth and those referrals. But that all started with networking. So I had a huge emphasis on networking, getting involved in our, we have something called International Live Events Association. So that's our industry group. And then there's a few other groups that I'm involved with. I'm involved with 3 chambers of commerce now. And then a wedding planner group. So I love to give back to them because it only benefits me too. It's a win-win. They have beautiful flowers for their events, and then I get the exposure at way less than like a print ad would do for me. I mean, you see those in person, and it's way better than any digital or print ad I could do. Yeah. Oh, I wanted to say too, so that last picture, and I'll just kind of walk through it. In my industry, we have something called a styled shoot. And so that's where you collaborate with other like-minded vendors. So you'll have a photographer, a planner, a stylist basically to design this entire photo shoot, and then submit it to a blog or publication. It's a great way for us to build our internal network, as well as a more affordable way to just get featured. So that's our goal, is to get featured on some of these high-end wedding blogs. It helps our SEO a lot. So because we got involved so much, I pushed for that a lot. We're at so many networking meetings, probably once a week, but not recently. And my extroverted self was really missing that a lot. But we had just a banner couple years just right out of the gate. Because we invested our money into these events, we put those in front of people. We got Best Floral in Austin in 2017 and 2018, which was huge. We were so small, but we ended up doing a gala, and the planner on it, they send us probably 50% of our business, which is amazing. I've met, I know in business school, there's like 20% of your clients give you 80% of the business. It's really true. And so we really try to foster those relationships. And then on a local level too, we had a lot of success just in our local market. And so that gave us a lot of exposure and made me feel good, like I was on the right track, basically. So, and then of course the Knot and Wedding Wire. So those are the national publications that we got some props for, but it's because we worked the pavement and we really hustled to make that happen. So as you can see too, this is kind of our growth trajectory, I guess. So when we started out in 2016, this is like the full year data, we had 60 events. 2017, it grew to 96 events. 2018 was a huge year, 214 events. We had a big staff at that point too. So it's interesting. Because we kind of shifted in 2019, I had a lot of personal things come up and really my whole, business trajectory plan. I lost my mom and my husband lost his dad within a span of 2 years. So if you've ever gone through that, you know what a toll it takes on your personal life, especially as a small business, as a micro business that my husband and I work together. He's one of my staff of 3. So we really took on the goal of doing less events in 2019. So that's why you see the shift in that number. But we ended up actually making more money because we were taking on less. We were not over exerting ourselves, and we really focused on fostering those relationships with our planners and those people that we had that knew our story. Really, we focused on them. We spoiled them, and so it really worked out better, and it felt a lot more manageable. That was one big shift that I made. I was just like, we're successful. Like 214 events in a year is very successful, but it didn't feel like success. It wasn't my definition of success at that point. I was running ragged. We had 6 events a weekend and it was just too much. And one school of thought would be to staff up and just, hustle and bring on more. But I really love the team dynamic of a small group working on one goal together. And I just feel like my anxiety, if I wasn't at that event, my mind was at that event. And so it was really hard for me to separate that. And I feel a lot better about where we are now. So success it's not always in the numbers, basically. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our team and what we look for in team members. Because we are such a small group, it is so crucial. So we have a core 3, and then we also have freelancers and studio help that comes in either to set up day of for weddings and events, or to take care of the studio and just get us prepped for the next event as well. So these are just some things that what I look at when I'm looking to hire. Dependability is number 1, mostly because you can't really call in sick. It's a wedding. It's not just another day in the office. It is all hands on deck. And I've had people call in or no show, it's very hard to deal with that when you have you have slim resources to begin with. And so that one is huge. Also adaptability, being able to adapt. It is such a fast-paced environment. It's a high stress environment. It's something that I've had to deal with, just managing your emotions, and there's so much adrenaline. And so being able to be adaptable and roll with the punches is huge for me. Also taking initiative. So in our studio, there's always something to be done. And I struggle sometimes with, we have beautiful flowers every day, but I struggle sometimes with employees that want to just have like an Instagram fun job and will post flowers all day on Instagram. And I'm like, this is not how this works. So that's been the challenge for me, is separating that really highly visual, beautiful part and to really getting down to work. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's a lot of hard work and long hours and blood, sweat, and tears. So I have to have someone that understands that. And someone that's creative and also can just kind of look at a situation. I say that half of our job is MacGyvering, just like engineering, rigging up stuff that you do big installations and you're like, how am I going to do this? I'm like, if I had another career, if I was good at math, I might have done engineering. But it's really being creative and thinking outside of the box is so huge for my industry. Our team meets with clients, potential clients. And so for them to be educated, polished, and very professional while still having fun and getting excited. I mean, people are excited about a wedding. I want them to be excited, but that polished part is important to me. And also a team player. So it goes back to all hands on deck. Sometimes we're up until 2 a.m. taking down wedding flowers at the end of the night. And that is not for the faint of heart. It's not easy. And you have to be able to realize that. So last week was probably one of the worst of my life. Any small business could probably tell you that. It was terrifying just seeing just income evaporate right before your eyes. We had 22 weddings postponed within the matter of 3 days. And that is only through May 15th. So that's not even considering the rest of our year. But this virus has really, of course, taken a toll on the small businesses. We are all freaking out. It's amazing. I don't have to tell you, it's never going to be the same. We are in the event industry, and we rely on people gathering together. And if you were to ask me a year ago, I always said that a wedding florist is like recession proof. Everyone always needs flowers. Everyone's always getting married. I did not see this coming in my wildest dreams. And so I kind of thought back. I've really been taking this week to just it's just damage control at this point. I have not strategized of what's next, but putting this together made me really think about that too. But I thought about when I was first starting out, I've always been very frugal. It's just the German in me. But one of my mentors told me this. He said, do as much as you can with as little as you can for as long as you can. And I've always tried to live by that moniker in my job, in my business, because I'm very frugal. I don't let a dollar slide that I don't know about. And so I am so grateful that we didn't invest in this huge space. We had opportunities. We had opportunities to grow like crazy into a big space and take on more staff. And I really had to listen to my gut in that. And I'm so grateful for that. But now I'm so I was telling Jamie before I hopped on, so we, ever since Derek's dad passed away, my husband, he moved here to the ranch to take care of the cattle business here. And so we have many acres of farmland now that we've been working on a flower farm. And so that is going to be huge for us now. It's such a blessing because it's not only these cancellations and postponements for us, this affects our entire supply chain. So it's not just so if they cancel, it goes down to the florist, which goes down to the wholesale florist, which goes down to the grower. And we don't even know what this supply chain is going to look like on the other side of this. So we have to be creative and try to be resilient, and knowing that some availability of our products might not be the same after all of this. I get videos of fields of flowers being mowed down. They're on a strict schedule. If they're not going out the door, they're gone. And so it's really scary. I do not know what this is going to look like, but there are things that we're looking at, which is growing our own flowers, which is getting involved in our local community digitally. So I can only imagine how bored everyone is going to be in the next few weeks. And we have skills to share. So possibly weathering that storm with online tutorials or design classes. We are just really trying to figure this out, and we'll get on the other end of it, but it just might not look the same. And so I'm interested to hear your questions when it comes to that. And maybe I haven't been in school for a while, so if you've got any good suggestions from the business world, let me know. It's always a process where I'm constantly just figuring this out. So I think that's all I have, and I want to answer any questions that you might have. I'm an open book, and so thanks for listening to my story.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayli. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute it. And if you want to mute yourselves back, you can. But we got a question that just came in on the chat. And so let's do that one first. And then if y'all want to pop them into the chat, we can. And I'll unmute y'all if we would like to as well. But Jose has asked, did you have a mentor when you were in college?
You know, I did. And it's funny because at the time, I don't think I looked at it that way. I think, as I was saying, I was always, I don't want to say annoying, but I was always curious. And so I always had people that I was interested in what they were doing, and I was constantly wanting to learn. And so, especially on the job skills, I would just be like, hey, can I try to do this? Even if it wasn't in my job description. And they're like, sure. And that's how I got into graphic design. It was just like, I took the initiative to be curious. And I think mentorship is it's a hard route. You kind of have to build a relationship and not come from it like, hey, I need a mentor. Will you be mine? I feel like I see that a lot, and I don't know. It's hard for me to just say, yes, I will share with you everything that I know without having that relationship beforehand. I know that's probably not the best answer, but I think making relationships and not trying to get something out of it immediately. I feel like I get asked now, like, hey, can I pick your brain about everything that you do to like start your floral business? Because that's what I want to do. And I'm like, hold on, like you're going to be my direct competition. So it's like, let's pump the brakes. Let's talk a little bit about your goals and things like that. So I think, there's nothing wrong. Like I said, I'm an Instagram stalker, and I will make friends that way so easily. But I think approaching it that way, just coming from a place of learning and not wanting to get something from somebody. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, we've got another question from David. So when you first started your business, did you face any setbacks that really discouraged you from continuing? And if so, how did you get past them?
Yeah, I think, I mean, like I mentioned, my mom passed away probably, I think it was maybe 6 months into me starting the business unexpectedly. It will throw you for a loop. Um, I I didn't get sick time or bereavement time. Like if you have a 9 to 5 corporate job, like you get some time to process that. And I really didn't. And I felt really alone. I didn't have coworkers to bounce it off of, especially then I was really small. Um, my second time around with that happening, I'm involved in something called the Rising Tide Society, and you should look it up. It's creative entrepreneurs, and we have a local chapter that I helped to start, and I built that network of supportive people that helped me get through that. So I had florists come in and take on weddings, design them for me, just say, take time with your family, we got this. And that was huge. That was, I still remember that generosity. And their tagline is community over competition. And they really stepped up, and because the community part was the hardest part. It feels really lonely sometimes. So I think my biggest thing is getting to know, making a network, getting involved so that when something terrible happens, you can ask for help and not be afraid to do so.
So, Kayli, a question I want to ask you. So, when you mentioned, kind of this current situation and all of the, you know, closures and postponement of events and things like that, if you could go back like 6 months and you knew something like this had potential to happen, because we just had no idea that anything like this could happen. If you could go back in time, what would be some things that you would advise yourself or others to do to kind of prepare for the unexpected? Because this truly has been such an unexpected time.
For sure. It's funny too, is like, I feel like, knock on wood, like I was like, this is too good. Like it was like the golden age of events. I mean, we got 5 inquiries a day. Our corporate clients, we worked for Apple, for Nike, for Mercedes. Like we had some high-end clients that were just partying. Like we did a ton of South by Southwest crazy stuff. And I was just like, oh my God. I was like, when is the other shoe gonna drop, right? It felt too good. And then I'm like, here it is. There it is. It's just like, it's gonna come. And I think we're all just reeling because we built our businesses on people gathering together, and we're completely shifting. Like there is no work from home like that we know of. And that's for everyone in the event industry. And we have it good. I mean, we at least can deliver flowers to your door. If I had to do that, we can do some of these online things, but a lot of my friends in the event industry are just shocked that this could ever happen. We just didn't ever see it coming. But I think investing wisely and just really minding your profits. Like for a long time, I was like, I feel like a money hoarder because I just don't ever spend anything from my bank account, for my business account. I'm just so cheap, and it really worked out in my favor. But it was because if something like this ever happened, and I think about I hardly have any health insurance, it's terrible, but I'm like, what if something happened to me? I want this nest egg. I want a fund that I can dip into to take care of myself or my family in case something terrible happens. I mean, I think I was used to tragedies happening, and so I felt really good that I was able to be like, okay, I can take care of my family and my staff too in this time and just weather this out. But we're taking it day by day, and I think it's gonna be interesting. Come back in 6 months and ask me the same thing. I can't wait to be on the other side of this and be like, remember when this happened? This was crazy. But I'm waiting for that day. But I'm grateful that I stuck to my motto is start where you are and like do as much as you can with as little as you can. Because it's funny, back then I was like, I have a small space that I've outgrown 3 years ago, but I've been making it work. And like my designers are in there, and they're like all on top of each other. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm like, oh, thank God I didn't expand. I almost signed a lease for 4 times the space. It was in my inbox, and then Derek's dad passed away and everything changed. So like you look back at your life and things that might have seemed like tragedy, like can be a blessing in a lot of ways too. So I'm feeling very grateful actually in the midst of all this. And I also want to say too, this gives me time to slow down and work on the behind the scenes of the business too. So, I mean, I'm working on my website, I'm working on like our whole communication plan with our clients. There's just so much from the day to day that just gets lost. So we're working on the client communication side and some of the things that we never have time for. It's a perfect rest and reset. Everything's kind of come to a halt as far as the inquiries because everyone's scared. And so you just have to like say, okay, this is our opportunity to shift and focus on how can we be better and better prepared when we come out on the other side of this.
Well, we've got a question from one of the students. His name's Isaiah. I'm going to unmute him real quick so that he can ask it. All right, go ahead, Isaiah.
Hey, Kayli, this is Isaiah. How are you doing?
Hi, doing good, Isaiah.
Sorry, I came to the presentation a little late, so I apologize for that. So I'm not sure if you covered this or not, but my biggest thing, or the question that I have is, how were you able to kind of give back control, right? Or I guess give control rather to your employees, rather than trying to do it all at once by yourself?
That is a wonderful question. And it is one that I struggled with from the very beginning. I think it's because it's all in your head, and you make these processes and you have your ways of doing things, and you think it's impossible for anyone to do it as good as you. And they might not be able to, but you have to let a little bit of it go, or else you're going to make yourself crazy. So the best thing I ever did was hire my studio manager, who we work so well together because she knows my quirks and I know hers. So I am not good with like the numbers. I like to make money and then I like to forget about it. I'm the creative. She's behind the scenes, loves that kind of stuff. But she also is a systems person and I am not. She would sit down and be like, okay, how do you do this? Like, I'm going to put together a program. I'm going to put together our procedures. And she was just like, design, and I'm just going to talk to you. And that is huge. And if you're looking for a job, be that person, because that is huge. That was like, I hired her as like a shop helper, and she ended up being the most crucial part of my business because she could take the initiative and see the systems where I was struggling and step in. We have a CRM called Honeybook. So that was a game changer as well. It's got the whole pipeline of my inquiries, questionnaires down to proposals, contracts, all of that. So it keeps it in a nice little timeline for us. And I put all my recipes, we call them flower recipes, for any design that we do. But if you're ever in a tragic situation, you've heard like the hit by the bus like mentality. If you're ever hit by a bus, the show has to go on, especially in floral, like it's a wedding. Like I can't just step away. So when I had to, I was glad that I had those procedures in place and that I trained them and was able to just give a password and say, here, everything's in there, and people could jump in there and take care of it for me. So even if it doesn't feel like you can do it, baby steps. I gave over responsibilities a little bit at a time, and I won't say that everything was perfect. There was a few times I had a designer come on that I gave a lot of responsibility to, and we were blowing and going. It was that year of 214 events. Like, it's hard to keep up with that, and I lost a lot of money because I gave her too much control. So I had to kind of pull it back. But don't be afraid to do that and tweak it, but baby steps. I'm a control freak too. I really, and especially in my role, I'm an artist. It's hard to say, design exactly like this, and not have that quality control and that, constantly in your mind. But baby steps, you can do it and you should do it. Otherwise, it'll make you crazy. So I've also hired other designers that have their own skill set that complement mine, that I can share some of that workload.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Kayli.
Thank you.
So I've made it now where y'all can unmute yourselves if you'd like to ask a question. I was hesitant to unmute all 40 of you at once, but as I'm sorting through on Zoom, I made it to where you can unmute yourselves. And so if you want to jump in and unmute yourself and ask a question, you're welcome to. I just ask that you put yourself back on mute after we finish up with your question. But so if anybody wants to jump in and ask a question, y'all are more than welcome to.
Also, I noticed I have a typo in my last slide. The editor and me. It's the Bloomberg TX is my Instagram, so come follow me.
So while we're waiting to see if anybody's got a question, we had a couple questions come up in the chat. One student asked about if you travel for events or if you only offer service in your area.
That's a great question too. So yes, we do, and it's pretty amazing. So if you've ever ordered like Blue Apron or anything like that, that's actually how we get our flowers. So they come in giant, like 6-foot boxes to the airport. And so they're packed in ice, fresh cut from the farm. And so we can design anywhere that has an airport. So I'm dying to do more destination weddings like that. But we are in such a great location that we travel on a daily basis up to an hour and a half to deliver. The hard part is staying awake till you have to come back at the end of the night to pick everything up. That's so hard. I go to sleep at like 8:30. So, but yes, we travel, and that's a whole other series of logistical nightmares, but we work out of Airbnbs and hotels. Like, we make it work. I've designed, on bedroom floors of hotels many times. So it's kind of fun. You see the behind the scenes of what goes into a big event like that. But it's pretty cool that we aren't subject just to our local market. Thanks for the question too.
Any other questions from participants? Got a couple from the chat that I can throw in there, but I want to make sure to give y'all a chance to pop in with any questions if you have them. Another question that came in from Courtney was, would you say that you can find a work-life balance as a floral entrepreneur?
The dreaded question, right? I don't know if there's such a thing. It's interesting though. I mean, my friends and my staff will tell you that they have seen a shift in my priorities. We're also trying to have a baby, so like that's a whole other thing that's like so scary, but it's we figure it out. We're resilient. We figure it out. But it is really hard. You can't leave your work at home, and you're like, I have nightmares all the time about just like all the flowers in my cooler freezing, and like I've had it happen before. I mean, it's a legit nightmare that could happen. So there's a lot of anxiety that goes into it, that it's hard to leave at the door. And it's interesting too, like I thought freedom was going to look a lot different as like an entrepreneur. It's like you think you're going to have all this free time and like make your own schedule and all this. I'm like, yeah, I have the free time, but I spend it like stressing and like checking emails like obsessively and just not super healthy. So it's always a balancing act. And like, I think it's that my friends and my family help get me out of my headspace, and just be like, hey, can you just go do some yoga, or like, can you get away for happy hour and leave it, and especially on vacations, it's like impossible for me to be like, I forgot a wedding, I'll be on vacation, I'm just like, did I forget a wedding? Every phone call, I'm like, ugh. So it's a work in progress. It's very hard, but I think, having hobbies is helpful outside of your job. And so that's what this garden and farm has been keeping me busy, and it's like a healthy, I'm not drinking as much wine anymore. Like that was like an unhealthy work-life balance, but just finding healthy ways to like do other creative things that aren't your work is important, especially for me, because I'm like, my job is awesome. Like I love what I do still after all these years. It's creative, it's fun, but I have to get outside of that sometime too, or else like it's a recipe for burnout big time if you stay in that space all the time.
So I have a question for you, and then Cody, I see yours in the chat. I'm going to get to you. But so you mentioned about not liking math, and Kayli and I have a similar background in that I was a journalism major from SFA for my bachelor's degree, and I also just describe myself as someone who doesn't like math. And when I've thought about the idea of starting a business, one of the things that can feel very overwhelming, I think, is the financial aspect of it, is figuring, if you don't have a head for numbers, but you are creative or you have this great idea, how do you navigate all of the financial aspects of it? And so that's something that I'd like to hear your perspective on, because I'm sure that there are students in on this that are like, man, that's so cool, but I could never do that because I don't understand taxes or, finance or payroll or things like that. And so walk us through kind of how you got that set up in there, but also like what resources you use to help you to navigate that.
Yeah. Yes, it's super scary, especially when you're first starting out. Like, I'm always afraid, like, did I pay the taxes this month? And like, it's written by people that are not creatives, it's a totally different language. My advice is to get someone that loves that kind of thing, or you can hire, like my CPA is the best money that I spend. She's really tough on me and it's great. But I was like really frugal. I just bought what I needed. And then I worked the money side out on the other end. For me too, I have a lot of contractors. So I do like the 1099s versus like an actual W-2 payroll. But I'm actually shifting into putting people on the payroll. So we use something called Gusto, which helps pay my my taxes as well. I'm like, if I could do one thing over again, is sorting out financials on the front end, because you pay a lot of money in penalties if you just like figure it out later. So I did extensions on my taxes because I was so scared. I was like, I don't know what this means. So investing in that, like, especially I have like zero love for it. And so a lot of people that are opening businesses, they do like the numbers. And so it's not my jam, and that's okay. It's good to delegate those kind of things because it's so much energy. And just, I don't know, I'm always afraid to mess it up. So the government scares me a little bit. So, but I think too, I think we complicate it a little more than we need to. I did a lot of work and resources with like our small business development center at Texas State University. So when I was first starting the business, I didn't have a business plan. I know people like don't want to hear that, but I didn't. But I did have a lot of experience going into it. Like I think it's interesting because entrepreneurship is it's like a hot topic. Everyone wants to own their own business. It's like fun and exciting. But it also takes a lot of experience. Like I'm grateful for the experience that I had leading up to it. That was outside of floral design, and I did finances in my other jobs as well. Like, did I do it well? I don't know. But I had some like bookkeeping and record keeping experience that I was able to lean on just to get me by until I was able to, because I did my own taxes the first 2 years, I think. And then it got really hard and I was just like, this is too much. So I was then able to hire someone, but I didn't have someone right away. I just I did my research and just tried to stay on top of my taxes as much as I knew how to, and just went from there. So it's not easy though. That's like, don't let it hold you back, but it isn't easy.
So Kayli, what was one thing that maybe you were involved in college that you feel like was, has been helpful to you later on in life? So like a student organization or something like that. But what was maybe a co-curricular experience that?
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I did that.
Yeah, me too. So I was involved in Student Activities Association. Not only did I meet some of my best friends there that I still hang out with and talk to every day, but I got to see the event side of putting on an event, marketing it, and really just putting myself out there and not being afraid to invite people to things or talk to people. My network is everything, and that's basically how I built my business. And so, I think everyone says to get involved, but it really helped. And if you can find your niche, it really helped me with just my social skills. Like I used to be really shy, actually. And I think just having that experience of like, I didn't go into event planning, but I got some experience in that world. And then I did internships. I did one with the Nacogdoches Chamber of Commerce and with SFA. And I worked at a flower shop there. So I just it's all this magical, it all added up to me being brave enough to take the leap, I guess. But it just was finding, even if it's just a little bit of interest for you, and just exploring that was super helpful. And then I just was really close with my professors too. I just kind of, I stayed curious, and I made a lot of great friends that I still talk to today. And my network from SFA is huge too. I mean, I have probably 3 alumni from SFA getting married this year that I'm doing their wedding. So you just never know how the connections that you're making are going to benefit you later. So just kind of go at it with an open heart and say, like, what can this add to my life, and what can I take away from this?
All right, well, we have just a couple more minutes before we wrap up on time. And so I thought that I just kind of ask if in closing, if there's anything else that, any, pearls of wisdom that you'd like to impart upon the students, or just kind of anything in closing that you'd like to say before we all wrap up.
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me, but this has been on my heart, like, since I knew I was going to talk to you guys, and it's just such an unsettling and uncertain time. But I think my biggest thing is, like, it's seasons of life, it's every business and every life is going to go through different seasons. And it's like, we've been riding high for a long time. And so it's really hard to see, like, what the future is going to look like. But it's just knowing that you're going to come in and out of things, and it's going to be okay. So I always say, like, starting my own business, I was so miserable that I didn't have another option. I felt like that misery, like, made me hustle and be like, you know what, I'm going to try this. And if it doesn't work out, I tried it. The risk was minimal. And I'm so glad I did. And so, I know if you're in this workshop, you're, looking at opening a business. I think, I love the mentorship idea. I love getting just involved where you can, and just kind of accumulating those skills. But on the other side, it's a lot less scary. I was very scared to start my business. I was so afraid I was going to fail miserably, but I had my degree to fall back on, and I had my experience and friends. So it's, I had a tangible idea that I knew was proven and could make money. And I know that not every business is that way. I felt fortunate in that way. But the jump was a lot easier on this side. And, I think a lot about entrepreneurship. There's a lot of people that say, if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. I feel like we've had a really charmed business. I mean, it has been really, like, growth from day one, and I feel very fortunate about that. But I do know it's because I put the hard work in on the front end, and I worked my butt off networking and just talking to people. And so if you're doing that, like, that's the first thing, like, that you need to start on anyway. And you'd never know what it's going to lead to down the road.
Kayli, thank you so much for your time this evening and working with us on this Zoom call. This has been great. I've really appreciate it. I would ask for like a round of applause, but can't because we're on Zoom. So, but thank you so much. One thing I want to share with the participants before we jump off the call is so with SFA going virtual for now, I wanted to make sure that y'all knew how to access the Center for Career and Professional Development. We are still open and we are still working with students. Our workshops and events are going to look a little different for the time being. We'll be offering hopefully some more live workshops and things on Zoom, so y'all can still interact with us that way. But we have a website up. You can see it up here at the top, but then you can also access it over on the left-hand side, this virtual services. But so this website talks about how to access CCPD virtually. So things like document critiques, career coaching appointments, mock interviews, job searching, things like that. We have a resource for that on our website. So we're still doing career coaching, mock interviews, things like that. They just look a little bit different. They're on Zoom right now. But so I wanted to make sure that you guys who were on the call knew how to access us in case there was anything that we could do to help you guys in your career development during this time. But Kayli, thank you so much again for your time. And this is going to wrap us up for this evening. So thank y'all for joining in, and we'll look forward to working with y'all soon.
Yay, thanks guys.
Okay, thank you, Kayli.